Hello, everybody. Here it is Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, and we are delighted to have Martin Willis from Podcast UFO with us. Martin and I were together in San Francisco at the UFO Con. We've been comparing a few notes for all the good stuff and fun stuff that happened there, and Martin's been to Contact in the Desert and other places. So I was at SCU, so we've been busy. And Martin has been busy with this podcast since 2011. And wow, he's closing in on 800 interviews. So it's pretty amazing. Oh Martin, welcome.
Well, thank you. Yes, it's actually less than that, but I think it's somewhere around 7 something, but I don't really know because I did a lot of interviews that are A and B. So yeah. It could be up there, but anyway, it's enough.
Grok,
and thank you.
Grok counts it as 780.
Wow. Yeah.
Well,
anyway, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I'm just beyond over the moon. You're here. So tell us your story, your origin story, how you got into UFOs, and how you got the podcast started.
Okay. Well, it was all kind of by accident. Now I had, as you know, growing up or whatever, I didn't really have much of an interest. I had like a sort of an interest, but really nothing to spark me from looking into it, you know, any deeper than just a passive interest, like I would call it. And then I had already, I moved to California basically, and it was 2007. I was at a ranch in Carmel Valley, and I was just minding my own business, sitting in a hot tub, and I was not drinking, by the way, just for the record. But something caught my eye. It was dusk. Something caught my eye, and it was a saucer-shaped, you know, a perfectly shaped disc, just glowing gliding right over my head, and it had a blue glow around it. It was very strange. Now I have heard a couple of people say that since, but the like a plasma type glow around it. But the thing that freaked me out, I didn't have the bubbles on or anything, so I noticed there was absolutely no sound, and that really freaked me out. I mean, more than anything, you know. But I got to say, if I had a camera on me, I probably wouldn't have thought to use it. Yeah. You know, just because I was like in the moment, and then it stopped and just stayed in one location for probably 10 seconds, something like that. And then it wasn't moving very fast. And then it went on a straight line toward Monterey. So I jumped out of the hot tub and I ran to a guest house where I was staying. And I called 911 because I had no idea what to do, how to report a UFO. And I said, I apologize right away for calling 911, and I said, there's something flying overhead toward Monterey, a UFO, or I think she sarcastically said, "You mean a UFO?" And I said, "Yes." And so she put me on hold for, it seemed like 19 or 20 minutes, and I finally hung up. And so I went into work the next day, or a couple days later, and I was mentoring someone, and I said to her, you know, you got to hear what happened this weekend. And, you know, told her the whole story. And I said, please don't tell anyone. And about 15 minutes later, people are going, "Ooh, aliens." And, you know, did you get probed? And, you know, all this stuff. So anyway, so that kind of, you know, the ridicule part of it kind of made me think, oh, geez, you know, I better not talk about this. And, you know, I had another experience before in the past that I decided I wasn't going to talk about either, sort of a paranormal type of situation. So anyway, I just 2009 came along. I was at an auction gallery and was into antiques, you know, basically since I was very young. And so there was someone on the radio that he kind of got booted off, and it was Adam Carolla. And I just heard him talking and saying, "I'm going to start a podcast," and he did. And I thought, well, if he's doing a podcast, I should be able to figure out how to do a podcast. It was not easy at that time, let me tell you. Nope. And just to in 2009, it cost me $1,200 just to get the feed that will go to, you know, iTunes and stuff like that, you know, and took like weeks to get this thing together. Now you just push a button, it's, 5 seconds, it's done.
I'm telling you, StreamYard has changed our life.
Oh yeah, and there's things like StreamYard comes along, and but anyway, so years went by, and I started doing other podcasts. I did some on comedy, and that was a lot of fun. And then a comedian talked to me from the LA area. I was on his show, and he asked, "What's the weirdest thing that ever happened to me?" And I said, "Well, the UFO." And he was like teasing me, but anyway, we got through that. And then he contacted me, I don't know, maybe a week or two later, and he says, the word UFO is a real hot topic. He was doing like search for keywords and things like that on what was a hot topic on any of his guests or whatever. So I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to start a podcast on UFOs. So I started looking into it, and I thought, oh my goodness, there's some really intelligent people, non-wackos, that are talking about this.
Right.
And, I see people like Leslie Kane and, like that. And I said, wow, journalists. And, so I started thinking this really got to be something to this. And so I asked everybody under the sun if they would be on my first podcast. I know how hard that is. And finally, Stephen Bassett said, sure. But, Stanton Friedman wouldn't. And then, but eventually I had him on like 12 times or something. But, so it was hard to get going, and I understand how hard it is, to get going. And now there's so many podcasts on the topic. When I was at Contact in the Desert, I ran into some really fun people, and someone said, "All right, I'm a podcaster." "Oh, you're a podcaster." And the guy said, "Who here is not a podcaster?" A lot of people doing podcasts on this topic.
Yeah.
So in my case, I got into the UFOs, let's call it 2015 and 16, when I saw and heard stuff inside government. Followed Richard Dolan, read his books, saw him interview Chris Ledsoe, went to Chris Ledsoe's house, and had a ton of experiences. That was a slam brick to the face introduction, and they followed me home. So I've been having experiences ever since. And then I met her near the end of my time in Alabama, and my mother had passed away. She gave me a reading, and I went, whoa, wow. Mm-hmm. I never believed in any of this stuff until now. And so we began investigating other things, and I found out she had been abducted, had UFO experiences, has an implant, on and on, hybrid kids, and trying to hide them from the bad NHI in her arm under the table.
I still feel crazy when he says this stuff. I'm like, oh my God.
No, but it's, then I told her, all the stuff you're telling me, everything from the reptilian doing bad things to you to all this other stuff, let me show you that there's thousands and thousands of people just like it. And that really changed her entire outlook.
I have a question for you. You don't have to bring it up, but I am very much into paranormal. Can you kind of talk about your paranormal experience that you brought up a little bit ago?
Okay. Well, I don't know what happened, but it's, I was doing, I can't say it was a ghost or whatever. And it's kind of a weird thing, but it really happened. And it was one thing that I said that I'm never going to tell anyone. I really felt that way when it happened, because I said, who would ever believe this happened? But I watched it happen in front of my eyes. And so I was in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where I live in the summer times. And I had the auction business, and I was basically, I took all the antiques out of this house in Portsmouth, working for a lawyer. It was a family, they passed away. The last living relative passed away. Wasn't a very old house, probably in the 1940s, something like that. 2-story. So it was, I can't remember if it was spring or fall, but it was in the shoulder season either way, kind of chilly. So we had the front door open, and we were just hauling stuff out. I had one worker with me, and I had asked the lawyer if he wanted me to get the house ready to sell, sweep down and all that. So he said, sure. And I gave him a price. He said, okay, slow time of the year. So I'm upstairs, and I got done I already said the front door was wide open. No wind that day, by the way. So I got the stairway. I swept the stairway and I slid the broom. I was all done with the broom. I slid it down the stairs. And then I went into this bedroom and they had put a carpet in. And I still remember today it was a green carpet. And they never cut the bottom of the door when they did. So I had to force the closet door open to get it open. And then I was bagging coat hangers and things like that. So, and in the room was all these, what they have, storm windows, they call them. They were all down. All the windows were down. So I tied up the bag and I turned around and I walked to set it down in the hallway. And all of a sudden the bedroom door went slam. And I go back in and I'm looking at the bedroom door and I pull it and it's like still tight in the bottom. I says, I'm going to get the heck out of here. And just then the front door slammed.
Oh my God.
And I went running downstairs and the broom was leaning up against it.
Oh, dude.
So I went right outside and I stayed outside and I waited for the guy that was working for me, Ron, to come back. And he worked part-time at a funeral parlor and part-time for me type of thing. So I told him that it was haunted. I'm not going in. And he's laughing and teasing me and woo, you know, like I can see him do it right now. And then, so we were all finished. And in the garage, there was one of those flower baskets, like a wicker flower basket with a big loop, you know.
Yeah.
And he looked at it, he goes, oh, I see those all the time at the funeral home. And I didn't think anything of it. And so he took off, last load, going to the dump. And I was just getting out of there and I just grabbed that to leave. And when I do, it's stuck. And so I'm pulling on it and it won't move. And so then it breaks in half and the bottom stays right where it is on the floor. And I toss it in the truck and all of a sudden I go, wait a minute, how can that be stuck? And I went over and I tapped my foot and it was loose. There's nothing holding it.
Oh my God.
So that really did happen. It really, really did happen. And I have no way to explain what it was. Now I've
our first activity in this place after we moved in together here in Maryland, we started having poltergeist activity, and I put up camera to see if we could catch anything, and we got an electronic voice phenomenon of her deceased boyfriend saying hello to their son on the camera. That video is in our publicly available collection.
wow.
That was neat. No, I would have ran really quick. I would have jumped out the window or something if that would have happened to me. I'm such a scaredy cat. I love this stuff. I'm just a scaredy cat. So,
But me, I put up cameras and let's see what we can get.
Care.
I don't care.
Thank you for sharing that, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it worked out well and didn't follow you all the way home.
Oh yeah. And it's funny, just a few years ago, my aunt by marriage, her mother lived right next door. And she asked me to come over and look at some antiques. And I went there and I said, anyone ever talk about the house next door? Anything weird going on? And she said, no. And I just didn't. A couple of times I thought about knocking on the door and I said, nah, it's probably not a good idea. So, but I go by it all the time. And, you know, it's just a regular house. So,
Okay. Every podcaster I know has a favorite podcast. Think back and pick one of your favorites and tell us about it.
you mean one that I've done in the past?
Yeah.
Oh,
One of your favorites.
well, I have a favorite, really short one, but that was on, you know, I was doing a thing and I'd like to do more of them, is on UFO encounters. I have a favorite encounter. We can talk about that. We can talk about that later. Actually, I have to tell you, and, you know, I don't want to, someone might say, oh, you know how people get, why didn't he say me?
Yeah.
But anyway, I had this guy named Scott Casella, and he is an underwater adventurer. And I'm telling you, he is a hardy guy. He's done more, like, I'm trying to think, like wartime situations than any Navy SEAL. You know, I mean, he's really, and he was the first person to actually film a giant squid underwater. He was the first person. He had a contact with a giant squid underwater. And so fascinating guy. So I had him on, and I didn't really know what to expect. I know that he had some type of encounter, and his encounter was so bizarre because it was a gold cube, and it started like under the water, a USO, and he was filming, and he said, if only I was thinking straight, I had my light on, and it was like a gold color and reflecting back, and so it would be hard to see in a film exactly what it was. But he could tell it was under intelligent control, and it scared the heck out of him. For all the many thousands of hours he spent underwater, that was quite a story. But just the whole overall talking to the guy, I got to say, it was my favorite podcast, just because of all the adventures he did. He had to try to remember the type of the squid that's they get about 80 pounds or whatever. Almost tore his arm off, and all these things happened to him. But yeah, so I guess that would be one of my favorites, if not my most favorite one.
Wow, that's amazing. So let's see.
I want to know now, with you talking about it a lot for many years, have you had more activity around you or your home? Because usually when you speak about it, they show up more often. It could be, in the sky or paranormal or whatever. But
yeah, I've had a couple of things happen in the past also that I can, tell you about. Like in the auction business, I was working at a home right up the road from where I was living at the time in Maine. And I was getting it ready for an auction, and I had to basically stay overnight because I had a tent up and had things there. And I just had, for security purposes, I had to stay over. But it was about dusk or something like that. And I'm arranging things in the house. And all of a sudden, like in the corner of my eye, I see a woman in black.
Oops.
Just for a second, and then she's gone. So I'm thinking, am I going to say something to the family? I don't know. So I've eventually got up the courage, because they're, kind of cool people. So I said, does anyone ever talk about anything happening here? And they said, did you see the woman in black?
Uh-huh. There you go.
And there was according to this family, there was a duel, and the husband was killed in the duel. And, the woman mourned and stayed in black for the rest of her life, I guess, or something like that. But I don't know if it's true or anything like that. So I've had a couple of other experiences that I thought were UFOs, and one was really good. I had Mark D'Antonio tell me it's probably a drone. Really high winds though, and this thing was going all over the place. Mm-hmm. Then but I filmed it and I showed him, Mark D'Antonio, and he thinks it's a drone. So I'll go with that. I was also, and I'm really hesitant to talk about, because I want to make sure that I keep my credibility. So I really don't want to, I want to be really sure that I'm seeing something unusual. But I did, I was down here in South Carolina where I am in the winters. I was out in a hot tub outside again, not drinking again. And I saw what I thought was like a satellite, how they kind of go across the sky.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it zigzagged.
Oh,
So but I don't want to call it a UFO, because just the light in the sky. I can say that it was bizarre, whatever it was. Maybe there's an answer for it. But the disc, there was no, in my mind, there's no real answer for that it's not one of ours, I don't think.
Yeah, when I go out with Chris Bledsoe, like I will be doing this coming weekend, tens of those orbs come over, and they're constantly changing direction. And it's easy in the middle of that to mistake an airplane for an orb. But even so, I've seen 100 orbs with him, and then one of them turns out to be an airplane that some people get, and the debunkers go insane.
I know.
Airplane, not the other 60 things.
Well, I invited myself up to Chris. He's been on the show a few times, and right from where I live, I don't think he's that far away. And so at one time he said, okay. And then, he's a busy guy. So, but that's great. I do want to make it up there someday. That would be,
you really fun. Should, because just be aware. I got to tell you, myself and many others who have been there, has it followed them home.
Well, isn't it you guys are doing it's for everybody. Everybody can meet them this weekend, right?
Yeah, there will be a night
Yes,
watch.
yeah.
So we're going to Cosmic Summit, but there's a night watch that will happen.
Oh, and where is that? Where's that located?
Greensboro.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, Greensboro, North Carolina.
Oh, geez. And you asked me earlier if I was going, right?
Yeah.
Is that where you were asking me?
Yeah.
Gee.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, well, for us, it's
Get my drink.
okay. Yeah, it's for us, it's like 6 hours away drive. That's a nothing burger for me.
Well, I'm going to look into that. I was just at Pine Bush. That was a great.
Oh, I love that show.
Yeah, that was a great
Love
fun up there. I am seeing, it's about 5 hours drive for me. Well, I will talk to my partner, producer, Donna, and see what she has to say about that. If it's worth the drive or not. But
Yep, it's good. It has quite a few people come. It's not a small one.
Yep. So I like some of the events. I want to go to the Ozark Festival again. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. And
I'm really looking forward to making it out to that one finally.
I'm sorry, what's that?
I'm looking forward to finally going there.
Oh, yes. I would highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. It's just a beautiful area. I would have never guessed it was that pretty. And there's that famous hotel there too that's noted for the paranormal. I can't think of the name of it right off the top of my head, but anyway, it's a fun place, nice area.
Well, Lala's a big fan of Dorothy, and all the quantum healing stuff, and she will just go out there and get all into it.
Yeah, it's called the Crescent. I think it's called the Crescent Hotel, but it's supposed to be the most haunted hotel in the country. And I was there with Mark D'Antonio and Donna, my producer partner, and I didn't remember him having something happen there, but now he says that he felt like he was being held back in one of the rooms. I didn't remember him saying it at the time, but he's saying that he had that experience there. It's interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is just me being now with her and watching all this stuff happen. There's a tremendous amount of crossover between people who have paranormal activities and also see UFOs and other things. It's kind of much bigger than people think it is.
I wonder if it's has something to do with being more aware of your surroundings after you have something happen. Perhaps because I don't know what was making me. When I was relaxing in a hot tub, you're kind of looking up at the sky anyway. That kind of comes naturally. But after I've had what I've had happen, I do every time I go out, every time I go for a walk, I'm always looking up in the sky, looking around, seeing what I can see. I mean, just the mysteries in the sky alone, not even with UFOs involved, is pretty interesting. Shooting stars, and I had a fireball happen over my head. That was one of the most dramatic things I've ever seen. And again, I was in the hot tub, but I don't know if I was drinking that time. That was in like 1985 or something.
I'll tell you my favorite story. Okay. So I get my brand new Psionics OpSen super fancy low light level camera, their high end model, and I'm out on the deck and I'm looking up through it, and oh my, that's a triangle UFO. So I push record, go, and it got out of range, and I pulled the camera down and turned it off to go inside and download it. Well, when I turned it off, it had not flushed its cache onto the SD card. So I completely lost the video.
Oh, awful.
It was unreal. I just couldn't believe it. It was perfection, zero doubt. Nobody would have doubted, and I lost the video.
I've seen a fireball before with my friend. That's the same night I saw the closest UFO. I mean, I saw the detail of the underbelly of this thing. And I found out recently we had a guest on, and they saw the same UFO on the same night, an hour after on the East Coast, an hour after we did. But it was just, I didn't know what the fireball was. I thought we were going to die. So I got back on the road. You know. I have a question. You've interviewed many people, military and civilians. And is there like a common story that you hear throughout your stories from everybody?
Well, you mean as far as an encounter, or are you talking about as far as what they think about UFOs?
Anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I do think that a thing in common is everyone has an opinion. I think that's kind of a strange way to go about answering your question, but that's what keeps me fascinated in the topic, because if someone says they know what they are, then I tell them to run the other way. But it's really the theories of it. Is I think, and there's so many people have a theory, but there again, I would stop, and I have stopped people when they tell me they know what it's about. And
that's good
on my show. But still, the thing that I don't hear a lot of people say that they're afraid when they have an encounter, more mesmerized. So I think a lot of people have that in common. As far as when they're talking about their encounter.
Right. I agree. Yeah.
Have you had any fear of the stuff we've seen while we've been in here?
Well, they numb me, but I've heard quite a few people get this numbing calm effect when they're close to one. So,
and me, I haven't feared it. I've welcomed it because I get to see what I always wanted to see.
Well, you want to get sucked up in the.
Well, I want to go for a ride. I want them to take me to Mars and let me walk in front of the rover and wave hi to all those NASA scientists.
Yeah, you better bring some gear with you.
Yeah, I guess I better bring an oxygen suit.
Yeah.
Okay, your turn.
You got it.
All right. Let me see. What's something that I always like to ask this. What's something over the years that you've learned that you always keep with you from, sharing stories about your experiences and other people? What's something that just you didn't know that you learned and it just amazes you,
Well, I think what amazes me is there's kind of a kinship in this whole thing, people that are looking into it. I think there's an enrichment. There's definitely has been an enrichment in my life looking into this topic. I mean, so I think that it's something that you see that, the people have a fascination for this. They're more open people, I think. And it's to me, I think there's a common bond. For instance, when I was at Contact in the Desert recently, I went to very few talks, and I would really want to go to talks, but I did go to very few of them because I was sitting in the lobby talking to this person, that person. And so it's just there's a really nice connection when you get to those places and you meet the people. I don't know if I really answered your question, but.
No, you did. I agree.
One of the things I like about UFO Con is it's not thousands of people. It's
it is small.
100 or so, and it's intimate.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And they are experiencers. Oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah. So I used to live in that area. So I was in, the San Francisco Bay Area for 9 years. And so it was really good to go back there and see, different areas where I used to live and like that. It's a beautiful, really beautiful area.
Yeah. So Melinda Leslie, who gave her big "We Found a Deep Underground Military Base" talk at Contact in the Desert, previewed it there, and let the smaller audience comment, critique, whatever. And I thought she and her team did a great job. It was really, really well done.
Mm.
Look, I mean, the kind of crazy stuff is the years before, deep ground penetrating radar found a tunnel from Bradshaw Ranch over to where the deep underground military base is, and it goes from Bradshaw right over to a cement factory. And so the cement factory is like, it's not operational. So what the heck is it? So I asked her to go look up the property records, and they didn't even bother to try to hide that Lockheed Martin owns it.
That's interesting.
They didn't even bother to try. And she's got pictures of triangles and military aircraft coming up out of the ground together.
Mm. Wow.
So our military and whatever they are working together.
Crazy, huh? Mm.
How do you feel about that? About the my labs and military and that conspiracy? Or not really?
I don't know if I've really followed that much. Maybe perhaps if you tell me kind of in
Okay, so Melinda Leslie is a great topic in this area. So she had a lot of abductions, and she was part of the hybridization program, and she has all these memories all brought up and so forth. But in between her being taken by NHI, the military would come, land a helicopter, and grab her from her apartment and take her off to a deep underground military base where she and a bunch of other people were there with whatever. And they were being subjected, bossed around, experimented on, and all this other stuff, because whoever is behind all of this is trying to figure out how to make the craft fly. And Melinda is one of those that has a memory that's been recovered of her putting her hands on the console and flying the craft. And apparently that's a common thing amongst these MyLabs is military abduction. That's what MyLab stands for, being abducted by the military for our secret program to try to figure out how things work.
Yeah, I guess I haven't followed that, so can't really give you my opinion on it. I'm sorry.
That's okay, but it's just one of the most fascinating aspects of this is there's some that have this type, and then some have both types. And it's just really, really unusual.
Mm.
It kind of hacks me off that people are taken from their home in the middle of the night by government thugs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that there's never been anything like any confrontation, known about that.
Well, I think there has been some confrontations, but it's mostly gets covered up.
But it would seem like if someone could prove it, that they could go to the media with it. If they could somehow prove that it was happening to them.
Except, like the rest of us do. You take that far out a story and the media runs.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Ross Coulthard is like to be the only one that'll cover it, and he has not. He has not gone all in on experiencers yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it.
Thank goodness for News Nation.
Oh, I know they're doing such a great job. He's on that like all the time.
What is that thing you're looking forward to most in UFO land, say in the coming 12 months?
Well, I've been to both of the hearings in Washington, D.C., and that was, especially the first one, felt very historic. So I'm hoping that more of that will happen. Perhaps it will be moving ahead a little, but I don't really know. There's a lot of people that say that have been in this a lot longer than I have that say, oh, it feels like it's moving forward and then step back and move forward, step back. But but I am looking forward to see what happens with, the government and, how they're going to handle if more things come out. Now, that recent article in the Wall Street Journal, I think was a typical situation where they're trying to diffuse the whole thing. And, you know, I had Bob Salas on right after that because they mentioned him in that. And, you know, and when there's 30 million people that read the Wall Street Journal worldwide, a little podcast is, you know, a few people will watch that in comparison. So I helped him compose a rebuttal letter. He composed it, and I basically, he had to get it down to 270 words for a rebuttal. So I threw it into Chat GPT and had it reworked and got it right down to 270 words. He's all excited, and I know that he sent it in. So hopefully they'll post that.
Well, thank you for doing it, because
oh sure, yeah,
it was aggravating to have him treated like that, especially when he has witnesses above the ground and with him down in the silo for what happened. He had security guard witnesses testify to the orange UFO over the silo.
right, yeah. And you know, the thing that bothers me the most about what they did with him is that journalist had been in touch with him since March and was acting like he was his best buddy, only to write an article like that.
That's horrible.
Well, I mean, Stephen Greenstreet buddied with Brandon Bugle.
That's
and
right.
Went out and wrote a destructive piece.
That's right. Yeah, Brandon wasn't too happy about that.
No, I don't blame him for not being happy. And,
Yeah.
and then you've got Kirkpatrick doing things like, I never met Brandon Fugal before. He never took pictures right in front of me. And then Brandon says, oh, yeah, what about this picture?
I know, that was perfect.
And you had, what's his name? The Senate staffer was sitting at the table, 2 chairs up. And he testified that they were there when the date was and all this other stuff.
Yeah, I have to tell you about Arrow and Kirkpatrick. Just a couple of things I'd like to talk about that. So I watched a live stream with Kirkpatrick, was giving a presentation. It was very small attendance, and online there was a small attendance. I don't know where everyone was, but I was watching it live. And a journalist sitting in the front row asked him, well, what about the Tic Tac UFO in 2004? Are you going to do any more research on that? And he said, oh, all the research has already been done. You all out there can see everything there is on YouTube, which was BS if you ask me, because, you know, they had the data bricks were taken off of the ship that night. And, you know, there's some definite information out there that they could get access to. Anyway, so that's kind of how Kirkpatrick was. It felt like that whole thing was window dressing. And now they have Timothy Phillips is heading that. And he just went on a podcast, UFO podcast, which people confuse with mine all the time.
Yeah.
He went on that the other day. And so I said, what the heck? He's actually doing interviews. I reached out to him yesterday and said, I'd like to talk to you about UFOs. And he says, give me your number and a good time to talk. Wow. I mean, at least he's interacting.
After he's talking about triangle UFOs.
What's that?
He talked about triangle UFOs in that podcast.
Oh, so you've already, I have not listened to it yet.
Oh, yeah. He said, he admitted that they have evidence, they've seen them, and they exist.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, I'm glad that he has taken the place. So maybe there'll be actually some forward movement. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, he's not in the position anymore. He and Kirkpatrick are both out of Arrow.
Oh, he's out of it too.
Both of them
are.
Oh, new leadership.
There goes that. Okay. There goes that idea. I was really hopeful for a minute, but I didn't realize that. Yeah, sure enough.
So have you run into, in your podcast audiences or other places you've been, people you thought were counterintelligence agents or disinformation agents?
Well, I think, it's a puzzle. Now, I got to just tell you a fun story at MUFON, the MUFON event last summer. Someone came up to me and they said, hey, guess what? There's a CIA and an FBI guy here. So I said, really? And so yeah, and the guy made it sound like, they're here, to get information or whatever. So I went up to the room and I told my producer partner, Donna, I said, "Hey, Donna, there's FBI and CIA here." She goes, "Let me at them. I'll buy them drinks. We'll get them talking. We'll find out where the aliens are." So she went right up to him, and I filmed her, going up to him, and talked for like hours. And I ended up getting engaged. And they're just people with an interest of UFO, and that happens a lot. You talk to John Ramirez, and he'll say, "Oh yeah, there's a lot of people really interested in it." But
well, and Jim Semivan was a senior executive in the Central Intelligence Agency and was the chief financial officer for the entire clandestine service.
Mm-hmm.
And he will tell you about his personal encounter in bed with his wife, where they were mauled.
Hmm.
I mean, so Semivan is, there are people inside and outside who've had experiences. And can I tell you my perception, given all the time I spent in the intelligence community? Basically, it's go and tell your security officer everything truthfully, write it down, hand it in, answer any question they have, and nothing ever happens about it. And that's a fact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, I believe that. I've talked to a few different people that were interviewed by AARO, and never, no follow-ups, no nothing. Pretty dramatic interviews too. So as far as answering your question about the counterintelligence or disinformation, it's possible that they're out there and that I'm even encountering them and not even realizing it. And there's a lot of people that speculate, this person's that, and, and all that. And I don't want to point any fingers because I just don't know. Some people have said Lou Elizondo is, and, and I brought that up when I was interviewing him one time, that some people say and he was really offended by that. And some people say, well, he was offended, but that means he is, so, it's going to be someone with charisma, someone that's going to be able to convince someone of whatever it is. And how those things work is they put a little truth into the mix and then, kind of mix everything up. And that's kind of what they were saying with the Wall Street Journal that they were doing, which is absolutely ridiculous. I do know they do absolutely do some of that when they want to, like a new spy plane or something like that. And people are saying, oh, it's a UFO, and they're not going to say it's not, because they don't want anyone to know, but not to the extent that they wrote in the article.
I talked to people that have worked on secret United States Air Force and or CIA airplane projects, and I know for a fact that there were UFO flaps which they utilized to cover up their work.
Yeah,
I mean, that's been known for a long time.
Right.
I founded a company with one of those people. I know for a fact it happened, but it's not like they make it out in that article, which is it's all that, and it's not all that.
Right. For getting back to Bob Salas, for them to say that they put this electromagnetic, whatever they called it, over, it would have to have a 60-foot tower. And I said to Bob when he was on my show the other night, how far away are these missiles from each other? He said, oh, a mile or more. So, how could they disable 10 of them if they had, one unit? And I don't know. It's bizarre. That whole story is so bizarre that they'd use that.
The facts are, since the earliest detonations of the fusion bombs, we understood how bad the electromagnetic pulse was. And every missile in that field had been subjected to what they believed was the maximum possible EMP from a nuclear warhead going right over the bunker, and it will not harm those things. Mm-hmm. And the facts
shielded cables.
We know the Air Force came in, took out a board, replaced it, and the missile was fine.
Hmm.
They couldn't see a burn mark on it from high voltage.
Right. Yeah.
It's nuts. The cover-up is getting more ham-handed, as what appears to me to be them getting more desperate.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. I mean, they look what they did to David Grush, right after he came out. I mean, that's just a perfect example of what they, do when the topic gets a little too hot and they don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, so in 2022 at SCU, David Grush and other people that are now in Skywatcher came to Huntsville and tried to recruit me. But at that time, it was trying to recruit me to get to help Space Force, which was moving to Huntsville. Well, none of that kind of stuff happened. They haven't moved to Huntsville and so forth and so on. But later, and I have a picture someplace of me sitting right next to David Grush at the table next to him, and I'm sitting with Melinda Leslie, and he's at the table next. And so I told him, look, I've given up my security clearance. I am not interested in going back into that world. And they gave up until 2 months ago. And they interviewed me for Skywatcher, asked me to join their technical advisory board. And they were the same guys that had come to Huntsville.
That's interesting.
It's very interesting. But now they are not inside, they are outside.
Fascinating.
Yep. And I got to spend lots of time like with Jake Barber and John Blitch and the psionics people, Jordan and Michael and others when in SCU in Huntsville 2 weekends ago. So they're just people interested in finding truth. And so far, I don't detect anything nefarious. People worried about the dog whistle. They're worried they're going to try to bring something down and capture it, and etc. So people should see the non-aggression document you have to sign. You want to go into the field with them. You sign this piece of paper said, if you are attacked by NHI, you got to take it. If humans come and try to steal stuff from us, you can defend against that.
Wow.
So they're definitely non-aggression against the non-human intelligence. I mean, it's a long legal document. It's pretty amazing.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see all the nefarious stuff with Skywatcher yet, but my eyes are open. For so far, I'm impressed with their leadership, and we'll see how it goes from here.
Yeah. One of the things I think of when I think of them is it's kind of like they're someone they seem to say, well, we have the answers. We are, the experts. We're kind of keeping this to ourselves type of thing. I don't see them being super transparent about things. So I don't know what to make of them myself.
Yep. So, so if you'll look at the first 2 videos, you can see the person who is commander of scientific writing. That's Dr. Gary Nolan. And he is absolutely going to sequester every piece of data until it's in a paper and accepted for publication. Because that's the way all scientists work. They don't publish data or tell you what they found until the paper is accepted for publication. And Gary's in charge of that. I guarantee he is. And he is a stickler.
Yep. Good guy.
So people calm down. I think stuff's coming. You'll get more videos, but you're not going to see all the data tomorrow. You're going to see it when they're ready.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We all have to be patient and just see how things push out.
Don't you find all this frustration that, say, people in the UFO world are feeling at being yanked around by the government, et cetera, is really raising people's hackles?
Yeah. I mean, you can feel that way. There are, like I said, it's kind of the feeling like move forward and then backwards, move forward and then backwards. But I think it's still interesting that at least there's, politicians talking about it now, because that's unusual. That didn't happen before.
Yeah. My only regret, and I'm telling you, look, no disrespect whatsoever. but people need to understand how the world works. Junior level aren't even leadership in a committee, sitting on the panel with no investigative power, no subpoena power. They're junior, they're not senior. They are not going to get anywhere, because that's not how Washington works. The senior people, if they get involved, we might see movement.
Well, Schumer and Rounds, that was
They tried.
Yep, and he's open to it. They were both open to it. Again,
Yep.
that was you saw a bipartisan situation there where you'd have Matt Gaetz and AOC in the same room getting along. You never see that. So that was interesting that they were to at least, and they asked some good questions. Not so much the second time, but the first hearing, I thought they asked some really good questions.
What did you think about the science hearing?
Which one's that now?
Where Lou put up a picture of the irrigation field.
Oh yeah, I watched that. I watched that live, and if I haven't, I don't directly talk with him when I get in contact with him. It's through his wife Jen. She's very nice, but I decided not to say anything. But I did say something on my show about that. If I was face to face with him, I would ask him why he did that and didn't have it vetted. He went on to say the reason why he did, like he was trying to, get a civilian pilot should be able to report these things or whatever. I can't remember exactly what he said on Twitter or wherever it was, but still, I don't think it's a good idea. I think the third time he might have showed a picture that
Not good.
Yeah, it's not good. And I personally said to Donna when that happened, I said, he's done. When I saw that whole situation, I thought he's done, but maybe he can salvage things and he still give us some, really good information in the future. We'll see.
Well, he resigned his position with the UAP Disclosure Fund and other things. So It's obviously he's taken it to heart.
Yeah. So I hope he doesn't do it again in any type of way. And, here's a situation where, people have said, well, someone did that purposely. They fed him that to see, kind of to destroy him type of thing, and I don't know if there's any truth at all to that, but still, he's got to just be real careful when you're in a position like that.
Yes. Lala and I had dinner with Tim Guydet and his wife and two other people.
She just texted me, actually.
Yeah, so he is very impressive.
Tim Gallaudet?
Yes, very impressive.
Yep. I've talked to him. Yes, nice guy. Yep. He was really interested in, remember I told you earlier about Scott Cassell, the underwater adventurer?
Yeah.
They were going to go together and off of where he saw this in some type of submersible. I got them connected together, and I don't know whatever happened to that. And by the way, he has this object that I was talking about, the gold object under the water, on film somewhere. Last time I talked to him, and he says, do you know what it's like going through boxes of 2,500 films? That's what he's been trying to do he can't figure out. His films were not organized like by year or anything like that. And he's been looking, he has not found it yet.
What do you think cube is? I hear the cube a lot. Is it a species or is it a symbolic? What do you think the cube means?
Well, I just had Chad Wanless, I think that's how you say his name, was on my show last night talking about the cube as part of one of the ways of them, the propulsion on them. I can't remember exactly what it was, he said, but that is one of the forms that supposedly can move in some type of situation, some type of anti-gravity type of situation. Cube, disc, a triangle just needs a larger something, he said. I can't remember the technical implications of it. But so the cube is definitely one. You know, you hear Ryan Graves talking about cube and a sphere, and I had talked to a friend of mine was on the Antiques Roadshow, and we were sharing an office. I'll just tell this story because it's pretty fascinating. We were sharing an office, and one day I came in, and he's like, he can't type on a computer. He's going like with, you know, finger at a time like that. And so I said, so what are you looking for? And he goes, I'm looking you up to see if you're a convict or whatever he said. So I started laughing, and I said, oh, good. I said, well, if you are looking me up, you're probably going to see that I do a show on UFOs. And he just looked at me real serious, and he goes, well, they're real. And, you know, of course, you know, UFOs are real because people see unidentified things. But I mean, in the sense, I said, well, tell me more. And so he was at Amherst College, and he was in a tower dormitory. And he said, there's 4 or 5 other guys. He said, I'm not going to say I wasn't drinking, but he said, all of a sudden we see this cube come down between the, he called it a box, but he said it was, you know, square all the way around, came down between the towers. He said, down to about the 17th floor, or maybe he said the 14th floor. He was on the 17th floor or something like that. And so it was just sitting there. He says, and there were lights blinking on the corners. And he says, and all of a sudden it shoots off toward the mountain range. And he says, then they see a jet flying toward it. And the jet's getting closer to it, and it bursts into 5 lights. And then the 5 lights interact with each other. And then the formation light shot off when the jet got near. And so I said, oh my God. I said, how has that changed your life? And he goes, I could give a crap. That's his attitude. And I think it's really funny that everyone reacts differently to this.
They do. So look, before we leave, besides you're going to come to Cosmic Summit this weekend so you and Lala and I can hang out, what else have you got going on?
Well, let's see. So I'm in the South now, South Carolina. In a week, I'm heading up into the Portsmouth, New Hampshire area. And then I'm one of the speakers at Exeter, they do the Exeter UFO conference. So I'm going to be a speaker there. I don't think I've been real busy lately, but I was at Pine Bush and Contacting in the Desert, and then saw you out there. But I don't really have anything going on except for that one talk, and then off to Shag Harbor, emceeing up there again. And so that's a nice event. But other than that, just kind of hanging out and doing the show.
Got any juicy interviews coming up?
You know, at Contact in the Desert, I interviewed like 10 different people. So I'm feeding them in. Matt Ford's coming up this week.
Makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. But, you know, I do have some pretty interesting people. One of them is someone that hasn't really talked about Rendlesham Forest, one of the witnesses there. So she's coming up. It's a woman, you know, that was in the military. So I think that's a lot of fun. And then I have a lot of emails out to a lot of people, and we'll see what happens. And I'm never afraid to ask anyone if they'll be on my show.
Me either. I said she does almost
say no.
She's got this intuition for who to ask. It's kind of amazing. So Martin, look, thank you so much for being here.
Sure.
It was a good hour. It's good to see you again, and glad you're healthy and everything's going well. I hope to see you this coming weekend if you can. If not, enjoy your transition back to the New England.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
It was very, very much a pleasure. Thank you, everybody. Please join us next Tuesday for our next guest.